Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast. Hosted by Seth Andrews.
It's been a weird month. My father's in failing health. I'm not going to say too much about it, but we're talking hospice. We're talking about the final decisions of his life. I have been asked by several people, well, how do you feel? And the answer is, I have no idea. Is that weird? Is it weird to not be able to really define? Because we're not close. I love him. I care about him as my father. But, there's been a lot said and done over the past 12 years that has distanced us. He is a devout believer. He believes in a literal hell and has warned me that I am going there, And there's been a lot of awful stuff said back and forth by both of us. We both get worked up. We both, end up trying to defend our territory kind of thing. And it's been hard. It's hard on relationships. I was telling Natalie, it's one of the reasons I continue to do what I do, because I really feel like maybe the community that we have, maybe the conversations we are having, maybe all of this might make the journey a little easier for those who come after. Like, I would love to see someone else live in a world where there is less of this sort of judgment going on. And so I'm going through all this stuff in my mind thinking, well, what's that even going to look like? What's the funeral going to be like? It's going to be a church service. It's going to be overtly a church service, and that's totally cool. It should be, because I think funerals are reflective of the lives of people who pass away. If he is a devout Christian and he lived his life as an evangelical, it would make sense that his memorial service reflects his life and his value system. Don't try that shit when my time comes. I told Natalie, anybody tries to preach at my funeral, and you put a stop to that right away. And I've seen weddings, funerals, rituals of all kinds co-opted by people who want to just pound the pulpit and turn it into their own private little sermon. No. But when I'm there, I'm sure it'll be a ton of talk about heaven and Jesus. And, I've seen altar call. I saw a funeral with an altar call once. He died and went to heaven. There may be someone in the audience who doesn't know Jesus and may not know the joy of that reunion in heaven with our Savior. If you would like to know God, come forward and say the prayer or something like that. They had an altar call at a funeral. Do not try that shit when my time comes. Right? Because that's not reflective of my values. It's not who I am. But will the children be asked to say a few words about their father? Will I be included in that list? Will I be warned? Don't you dare say anything, as if I would go up there and turn his funeral into my soapbox. How will I feel? Will I feel sadness, or will I feel that? I kind of feel a sense of detachment now, like I'm looking at it through glass. When you're not close to someone, even a parent, you have an opinion, you might have feelings, but they're not feelings. I don't know. Does that make sense to you? Does any of this resonate with you? I know everybody else is going to be sobbing. What happens if I'm sitting in there in the seat and I'm not connecting on that level? Do I look like an asshole? Do I look unfeeling? I'm not going to fake it. I don't know. I've been having these conversations in my mind. What's this look like? So, I think it's okay to admit that you don't know, and you just take it one day at a time, and you take the experience as it comes. I lament the fact that we are not closer. He's 86, has leukemia, pulmonary fibrosis, he's on oxygen, and he knows the time is short. Right? He gets it. And so they're doing an awful lot of talking about, basic care, making sure he's eating, those types of things. But I know he's thinking about the end of his life. And when I sit in front of him, I took him dinner the other night and we were just sort of catching up, lots of small talk. And under the small talk, there's this undercurrent of stuff that is not being said. And I can see him fidgeting in his chair, like he's going to die thinking that I'm going to burn. He is going to die thinking he will never see me again. It's one of the reasons that I do battle with these fundy fucking religions. Because a superstition has caused him to, instead of enjoying the time with his family and celebrating the life of his son, who he raised well, etc., he's thinking about fire and brimstone and pain and punishment and all eternity. This superstition has infected what should be just a natural part of life, which is the end of life. And taking stock and being with the people you care about and saying the words and doing the things. If he didn't believe there was a cosmic wizard in space who would put together this quote-unquote master plan, and it was going to be perfect except for all the shit that failed. And then Satan would be sort of running around. The one who comes to steal, kill, and destroy is going to just screw everything up. And Seth is going to become brainwashed by the devil and do the devil's work and be a disappointment to the family. And then one day, when I die, that will be the last time I see him until the God that I love and worship takes my physical son in the physical world and puts him in a furnace and burns him forever, and I'll be okay with that. I mean, he's not okay with it, but he's okay with worshiping the God that would do it. And then they would say it's my fault. It's hard for me to find an emotional resonance with my father, a love language that fits into that cookie cutter. So when the time comes, I got to drag all that baggage with me. Do I find a way to chapter that out, partition it off? I don't know. It's just a little window into what's been going on in my skull lately. I know there are other people who've gone through this, who've gone through the journey, and maybe you've got some experience in this. I don't know. I know he's a victim of bad ideas. I know he's brainwashed by a superstition. I know. Still hard. 613, hi, who's this?
It's Paula White. Hi, how are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
My point was, in the beginning, I was going to talk about how, well, you got me in tears here, but how I'm really tired of how if you're an atheist or non-religious, that you still have to respect other people's beliefs no matter how crazy they are. And I think that's the last line that as atheists we have to cross, because I'm so tired of people killing each other to this day, bombing kids and blowing each other up and wars and all of that, and all because we've been so taught, and so have they, the believers, that we have to respect them no matter what. And I think that just keeps leading to more and more problems. And everything that you just said about your dad has applied to me because I come from a family of 5 kids. My oldest brother died in a fire because he was a smoker and a drinker, and he was my closest sibling. And then my other 3 siblings, 2 of them are religious, and 2 aren't, I'm getting confused, but 2 are not, but they will not do that in public, right? They pretend that they are because they think you should respect religious people and you should be quiet. I mean, they don't in private, right? They laugh and they snicker. And then one of them is religious. And when my mom died of pulmonary fibrosis, which was extremely hard, my sister, my dad, and I were in the room when she took her last breath, which is why I'm kind of shaking. She wanted no religion at her funeral. I mean, she was demanding that. I was with her and Dad a few nights before she went into a coma, and she kept saying, no, I do not want any minister saying mumbo-jumbo over me. I don't want anything like that. And my dad argued with her. He's not religious either. But he kept saying, the funeral's not for you. It's for the people who come to the funeral. And people who come to your funeral, they're religious, so you should respect them. And I kept saying to him, Dad, it's her funeral. Let her have what she wants at her funeral. That's the whole point. And he goes, but you're going to insult people who are religious. And Mom got mad. She was saying, well, they can have religion at their funeral if they want it. She said, it's mine. And she kept putting down the parameters of what she wanted and didn't want. And he was upset about it. You know, he said, no, the funeral's for the people left living. And Mom said, no, it's my damn funeral. You're going to do what I want. So I went with Dad for the funeral arrangements, and I told him, you know, the guy at the funeral home, she doesn't want religion. She doesn't want a minister. She doesn't want any of that. But at the last minute, during one of her wake, the guy at the funeral home suddenly said, now we'll bow our heads and say a prayer. And I just looked around the room in complete shock. So did Dad. And we're looking like, whose idea was this?
Whose idea was it?
I think it was the one religious brother's idea, because he had a smile on his face. And I think he kind of admitted it later on. And I just thought, how dare you, though? Like, she didn't want that. Like, she specifically said over and over again she didn't want it. And he had argued with me at one point and said that she wore a silver cross around her neck. And I said she liked crosses, and it belonged to her mother. I like cross necklaces. I think they're pretty. Yeah. But it means nothing to me other than that, you know. And now I have 3 siblings left, and they don't speak to me. Because I think I embarrass them, too, because I'm very public on Facebook and everything with I've just made this final stand here where, okay, I made religious jokes before, and I was very open in my small town about being atheist. But now I'm going, as far as a lot of people are concerned, overboard, because I'm posting, like, really over-the-top jokes, you know, like what they would consider ridiculously bad. And I think, no, but what I'm trying to get across to people is that I can respect you as a person, but I'm not going to be forced to respect your belief, because I don't, and I'm being honest. And if we keep doing that, if we keep feeling like we have to, then these people keep thinking they can do whatever they want. They can say what they want to us. I mean, even around other parts of my family, they can come in and they can praise God and they can talk about church and they can mention anything they like. But if I said, you know, as an atheist the other day, the room immediately goes cold, everybody gets a stiff back, they're angry that I even brought up the topic, they're angry that I exist as an atheist. That makes them angry immediately. If they see a book sitting on my bookshelf that says, you know, God is Not Great by Richard Hitchens, or getting the names confused.
That's
you know
all right,
what I mean?
I got you.
They're mad immediately. I can see them look at it and look away like, oh, how dare you?
There's a misattributed quote. It's attributed to Carl Sagan, but there's no record he ever said it, but it's a great quote. It says, that which can be destroyed by the truth deserves to be destroyed by the truth. And, you know, I hold to that. There are no sacred cows, right? If it's going to be a claim out there in the ether, it's going to have to back it up. And if it's ridiculous, it's deserving of ridicule. And we have every right to point and say, you know, this is not only wrong, but it's kind of crazy or offensive, and we stand against it. And you have that right as well, especially in your own forum, your own house, your own pages. Yes, and that's where I do it. I've lost good friends, some for a period of time, and they've come back. But they've said to me, you know, why do you have to say it? Like, it's fine if you are an atheist, but why do you have to talk about it? And I say to them, because believe it or not, I feel it's helpful to the world. I want to help people. And they don't get it. They think, well, if I can interject too, turn that on its ear and say, all right, if you're a believer in God, why do you have to talk about it? Why can't you just shut your mouth and watch them lose their minds? And they do, because what they'll say is, oh, well, you're just as bad then. So what's the point? Like, why do you have to be just as bad? And I'll say, oh, but I'm not. Okay, I'm not. And I've had friends say, but you're mad at them for doing nothing but talking about it and pushing their religion, but yet you're doing the same thing by pushing your atheism. And I said, but I'm not pushing it. I'm not going door to door.
I'm not building buildings on every corner. I'm not handing out tracts. I'm not phoning you. I'm not handing out books on atheism.
Yeah.
I post on my wall. That's it. And I call out pedophile priests when I see them. And
it seems like kind of a bare minimum, doesn't it? Like opposing pedophiles to me seems like kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. I'm thinking, come on, guys. I said this. And finally, it's amazing because I did discover that if you keep at it and keep talking, because I had so many people say, why don't you quit? You're not getting anywhere. People aren't listening. They don't care. But after a while, I started noticing a change on our town page where people were starting to very slowly listen. And I thought, see, you can. Talking does make a difference if you keep on going.
I understand what it's like to feel at least an emotional disconnection, if not even a physical disconnection with members of your family over this belief. But understand that family comes in many forms. I know you feel abandoned by your bio family, but you've got family here, and you've said a lot of really good stuff, and I so appreciate you being a part of the show. Thank you, Paula. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are not on this earth to keep other people comfortable. Always like that line. I don't know if I heard it or made it up, or it's not like it's groundbreaking, but it's just I'm not here. I don't have a responsibility to keep everybody else comfortable. Where's that written? It was when I was made uncomfortable that my life began to improve. All right. Discomfort was the start of a long journey for me, but it was a liberating journey, right? I'm trying a new auto screener process on my software, which actually allows me to see names. There's some of the callers' names. I think they're able to say what their names are, and it auto transcribes. So I'm going to try this. I've got Scott. Scott, you with me?
I am here.
Thanks for calling, my friend. What's on your mind today?
I was going to say, I wanted to talk about the Middle East conflict with Israel. And I know that's a whole bag of worms, especially for, you can't disconnect the subject from the religious part of it. But then again, you also kind of have to.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a geopolitical part of why Israel is doing what it's doing to the Palestinians, but they claim it's purely religious or purely equal from both sides being attacking each other. And there's a lot of people that use the religions to say that's the only thing that's the conflict, not just that, America needs a green zone in the Middle East.
Well, I'm no expert on foreign policy. I can speak to a degree about this long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, how much of it is, in fact, rooted in this idea of religious privilege. God has given us this land. No, God gave us this land. Right. And so they've been warring over the same lands for I don't know how long. But you're right. It doesn't all fit in a religious cookie cutter because the political ramifications and the weaponization of God and religious language and divine destiny for essentially what are selfish political ends. We have to talk about that. I'm terrified of the United States and what is, I think, often a religiously excused alliance with Israel because Israel is deemed God's chosen people, right? Ordained by God.
By the Zionists.
Yeah. This is part of an end times narrative. We had Mike Pompeo during the Trump administration, whenever Jerusalem was declared the capital of Israel, and Pompeo himself was saying that, Trump is like the Queen Esther who was there to defend God's people, the Israelites. And I think, man, this is religious. This is a superstitious model for carrying out real world foreign policy. And that's terrifying because once you believe God has given you this land and all the other interlopers are then agents of the devil and they feel exactly the same way, it's fucking jihad and it just never ends.
Yeah, to the point where states like Oklahoma and Florida have passed laws that say that you cannot publicly, if you're a teacher or a public administrator, you can't publicly say anything negative about Israel without getting in trouble. And they made it law. It's crazy.
Well, and they've also weaponized anti-Semitism, which is real and rampant. But many people have then decided if you criticize Israel or call it to task or don't side with Israel as it bombs media outlets in the Gaza Strip, etc., this is somehow bigotry against the Jews. It's almost like the Islamic faith.
That's propaganda that they use.
Yeah, it's like the Islamic faith weaponizing Islamophobia, saying that if you criticize the dogma, you are anti-Muslim.
Yeah, it's basically, it boils down to, I'm offended, so I'm right.
Which has been the calling card of religions since time immemorial, hasn't it?
Yep, right. It's emotional leverage that they use against you. And at first, it could be a really good tactic until you can recognize it.
Do you ever see an end to all of this? Like, I keep thinking about how long this particular conflict has been going on, and I just throw up my hands. I just, what?
Yeah. Well, we know what the solution is, and that's to stop supporting Israel monetarily. We support them to the tune of nearly $4 billion a year, all paid for by us taxpayers.
Well, I appreciate you sounding off. It's I'm sure the comment section is going to have a lot to say about this.
Oh, yeah. You can't criticize the government of Israel without being called an anti-Semite.
I think this audience will back you. I don't think this audience has given Israel any quarter, and I appreciate that. But, you bring a lot of good points to the table. And again, bigotry will not go away if we eliminated the superstitions, this whole God's people weaponizing of God. But it sure would take us a long way forward if we were to remove all of this religious privilege.
Yeah, religion and tribalism of all kinds. Yeah, absolutely.
Wise words. Thanks for calling, brother. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
When I was in FM radio, we used to do a newscast at the top and bottom of every hour. And my co-host was always joking because anytime international news came up, he said, we just write the same headline every day. Trouble in the Middle East, right? I mean, every day. Trouble in the Middle East today. There's a conflict going on in there's riots in the Middle East. There's a bombing in the Middle East today. How much of that is religiously fueled and excused? So much of it. You dig into this religious tribalism. I am God's child. This is God's land. We are on God's mission. They are the devil who must be crushed. So often this is pounded into the brains of young children. I'm reminded of an example, and you can find this on video, when Hamas had a Mickey Mouse character called Farfour, Farfour. And Farfour is on this Palestinian television show targeted to young children, which is straight up propaganda. And Farfour is telling these children, I'm supposed to safeguard the trust, this land which was occupied in 1948. It is a beautiful land, all covered in flowers and olive and palm trees. And we entrust you to liberate this land from, quote, the filth of the criminal plundering Jews. In the middle of the broadcast, Farfour is being interrogated. They bring in an actor who represents the Jews. He's in a black suit with sunglasses on. And the Jewish character says to Farfour, we just want the land and we're prepared to compensate you. And Farfour stands up and says, I am not going to do it. And suddenly, in the middle of this children's program, the character playing the Jew stands up, takes a knife, and executes this Mickey Mouse character, this guy in a big mouse costume beloved by the Palestinian children. I mean, this is hugely disturbing, but here's about 10 seconds of audio from the murder of Farfour. Now, we're seeing the indoctrination of young children to other and to hate and to declare war on their religious and ideological enemies. This is happening on all sides, targeted to the youngest and most impressionable. This is a culture teaching children to hate, using the most insidious methods you can imagine. And lest you think that Israel is off the hook, there is a video of a satirist. He's taking video of Israeli kids in an army museum. This is just a few years ago. And they're crawling over tanks and looking at all this militarization all around them. And the filmmaker, his name is Itmar Rose, is asking these young Israeli children, well, How do you feel about all this war? How do you feel about all of this, the machinery of killing? One girl answers, how did it feel to imagine killing Arabs? I felt happy. A young boy asked what he imagined when he was sitting in a tank. He answers, quote, I picture a dead Arab. There's a famous image of Israeli schoolgirls who are writing messages on artillery shells that are about to be fired into Lebanon during the 2006 assault by Israel that killed more than 1,200 Lebanese civilians. It devastated a whole bunch of the country. Childhood indoctrination. It's happening everywhere, priming hate and laying the groundwork for the warriors of today and tomorrow to visit death upon the other. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And I have no idea how it plays out, how it ends, how we stop the madness. I get overwhelmed by it. I've got Kayla. Thank you so much for calling. What's on your mind today, Kayla?
Well, as you probably heard in the audio I left, I'm Black and an atheist, and specifically I'm from the South, so you can kind of figure out what's all part of that equation. So, yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about my experience and I guess my small atheist journey. I'm only 23. Yes. I'm kind of like still figuring my way through this, I guess through the atheist community and understanding where I stand. But I've just been having like a lot of issues, I guess, with my identity, not just as a Black atheist, but as an atheist in general, especially I'm not a public figure, but the job I have requires me to interact with the overall public a lot. And I tend to be very outspoken, but I'm like wondering, especially considering where I stand now as an atheist, how I can, implement this outspokenness without being, I think it kind of ties into the conversations that you've been having before. It's like, I'm worried about making people uncomfortable, but at the same time, I'm just like, everything that I'm seeing around me just seems so harmful. And like, especially in the Black community, like being a Black atheist is so difficult. And I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation, where my family, my immediate family isn't really concerned with how I believe. Like my mother, she was very, she was the type of person, she's raised Roman Catholic, has some evangelical family members, but, they were taught to be staunch, hardcore Christians. And, if you weren't allied with Jesus or whatever, you were the devil, whatever. But, eventually she's kind of made a turnaround and accepted, especially how me and like my other sibling, he's also basically atheist now. She's kind of accepted where we are, but in the community as a whole, if I speak about the way I believe, I will get a lot of pushback. Like it's happened before when I haven't even like fully come out, especially to my own friends. Like they don't know that I'm atheist, but when we've touched on the subject of religion and stuff, they've been like, it's like you can tell when they give you the side eye that they know something's up, and they start, I don't know how to explain it, but it's this vibe that you get from the way they start addressing you. I specifically have an experience with this friend who's now, I guess you could say she converted to being a Black Hebrew Israelite. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
I am. That's alarming.
Yeah, it's very scary. And our friendship has, I'm pretty much dissolved based on where she stands and where I stand now. But a lot of the shit that she posts, I'm sorry, excuse my French, but
go ahead.
It's been very alarming. And I don't know. It's just been really scary. And this is kind of what's pushing me to be more vocal about my atheism, because I'm the previous caller, one of the previous callers, Paula, was saying that you see all of this stuff and you're just like, how could I? It's like you really can't push yourself to stay silent anymore because it's so damaging. But at the same time, it's like I'm still struggling with the fact that I don't want to make people uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. So, let me make sure I'm understanding you. I'm just going to throw out a few bullet points, and you tell me if I'm picking up what you're throwing down. Okay? I've talked to a friend of mine Mandisa Thomas with Black Nonbelievers, and we've had conversations about how, especially in Black communities, the gospel, the Bible, and the church are so aligned with the liberation of Black people during the civil rights movement, etc. So now you've got this scenario where if you challenge the church, you're also challenging your race. Would that be true in your case?
Yeah, I would think so to an extent, because especially, you know, I'm from Louisiana, so you can imagine that the church culture is very strong. I mean, I've watched a bunch of your things, and you were raised in the Bible Belt, so I'm sure you understand how that culture is. So especially in the Black community, especially in the South, where the civil rights movement was very active, you know, you're expected to kind of take part, because it's, you know, it goes beyond just being like, I mean, it's a cultural thing, and it's become kind of embedded in like our ethnic activity, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
So sometimes it feels like, and like I went to a Catholic HBCU back home, and it was very awkward for me because everything we did was very religious centered. And, you know, we didn't just have Catholic students there, of course, but a lot of the activities that we did in the school were very religious based or religiously based. And like, I'm a singer, so obviously you're at a Catholic university, you're going to have to take part in choir, you know, you're going to be taking part in singing for masses and other religiously affiliated things. And it seems like sometimes there's this like very deep, especially like amongst like Baptists or evangelical Black believers, there's this sense of community that's established by this religious foundation. And when you're not in it, or when you go against it, you're kind of ostracized. And I never really spoke out much about it, but whenever I did, or whenever I took part in these things, you know, even being part of it, I still felt very othered, if that makes sense.
It does. To my second bullet point, let me see if I've got this one right. Because you are in a relatively public eye professionally in relation to your career, you are concerned that if you are true to yourself in terms of religious criticism, non-belief in God, etc., that this might ripple out to the boss, your coworkers, clientele. It might affect you not just personally, but professionally?
Yeah, I do. Because unfortunately, I'm like, in the music world, a lot of people, a lot of people get their inspiration from, you know, how they were raised. And a lot of singers, they started in the church. I mean, I started in the church as a singer, technically. But even working in a more secular, I guess you could say, situation, I still feel that there's like this underlying, it just feels uncomfortable, because it's like, you know, that so many people believe. It's like every circle I've been in, whether it's like a convention or something, I've always run into singers that were believers or other musicians that are believers. And it's like, if you kind of step out of line, it's a little awkward. And it's like, I even see it. My dad, he's also a musician, and I see how he interacts with people, because he really doesn't know where he stands religiously, but based on what I've heard him say and what he said to me, he's probably, he claims to believe in something. I'm like, okay, at best you're like maybe agnostic theist, maybe agnostic atheist. He's like somewhere in between. But the way he presents himself in the public, he's basically doing the thing I think I have to do by pretending he believes in something. He'll say a few things here and there that might contradict what his coworkers or his constituents might be saying. But at the same time, because I know him, I know that what he's projecting to others that he's working with or that he's friends with, it's not him. And like, I feel uncomfortable for him. And like, in turn, I start looking at this, and because we're in the same, you know, kind of field, I'm like, oh gosh, is this what I have to do? Do I have to save face in order to like make my way through my career?
Yeah. Well, I might catch heat from people who hear me say that I understand if you want to play a longer game or play your lack of belief closer to the vest based on the fact that you are in Louisiana and there are so many consequences in play. I'm one of those guys who's like, if you can, be loud and proud. Say what you think. Live an authentic life. Be yourself. You don't have to keep other people comfortable. But you're talking to somebody who worked for a video production company for the first couple of years of The Thinking Atheist. I was behind the scenes. No one saw my face. I just had the icon up, and they knew my first name, but I didn't show my face. Because if any of our clients at the video production house, if any of them had stumbled across me, they would have taken their business elsewhere. They would have complained to the boss. And even though I think it would have been illegal, I worried that I would have lost my job. So there were so many dominoes that may have fallen that I found myself taking really a longer game, trying to navigate my way through. And I think that's true for you. There was a gentleman who had done some work as an atheist activist, and he posted it on his LinkedIn, which is largely a business connection. And some of the clients and bosses and coworkers saw it and raised some alarm. And I'm like, well, okay, fine. You don't have to post your stuff on LinkedIn because this may come bite you in the ass. The short-term consequences might be so great to you that it's simply not worth it. At the end of the day, though, as long as you are living authentically in your mind and your heart, as long as you are liberated, as long as you are able to determine what's important to you, to live your own value system, to play by your own rules, then I wouldn't be too guilty about, not screaming it from the mountaintop in Louisiana in the Bible Belt when you worry that it may come back to bite you. In the hopes, though, that maybe along the path you might find somebody else who is where you are, or maybe they're on a journey, or maybe they have doubts, or maybe they just want to talk to somebody. And, in that moment you can change their world. And I think the world is changed one person at a time. I don't have a solution for you. Yeah. I'm not Yoda on this stuff. I wish I had more for you, other than an encouragement that I know what it's like and it's okay. And you just go at your own pace. And if you're not sure, my advice would be play it slow. Don't put yourself in a position, because discrimination so often operates between the lines. If people find a reason to just not call you back, to not include you, to not decide they're going to hire you, etc. Those things are real. They have to be acknowledged and talked about. And if you see those red flashing lights, it's okay to stop and say, I'm playing chess, not checkers. I'm going to play a longer game, maybe a little closer to the vest, with the end goal of one day being able to say it loud and proud and not have to worry about all that crazy shit. I mean, does that help you at all, Kayla?
Yeah, no, that does. I feel better about that, because sometimes I feel like, I watch a lot of atheist content. So oftentimes I run into, I guess videos, not all, I feel like there are a lot of responsible content creators on, YouTube and other platforms. But it's sometimes you run into the occasional person who's like, oh, if you don't speak out, then you're, you're not really doing much for the cause or whatever. And I'm like, that kind of makes you feel guilty, because it's I don't want to hide, but at the same time, I have things to work around.
Well, I think many of the people who say those types of things may not be sensitive to the very serious consequences in place. And again, if we only speak out when it's totally comfortable, nobody really says anything about the things that matter. So I understand it in theory, but practically, if you're in Louisiana and all of a sudden you're cast off, you can't pay your mortgage, you can't pay your utility bills, you have nothing, your resources go away, you are abandoned. Well, yeah, I think it's totally valid and legitimate to take a second and say, do I want to just immediately pull the rug out from underneath potentially my own feet? Or maybe do I want to take a more measured approach, be more strategic? At the end of the day, though, your journey is not about other people. Your journey is about you. For me, that's the most important part of the story. You had the courage to continue to tap on the glass and kick the tires and say, is this legit? Do I buy it? Oh, hell no. Okay, I'm going to be true to myself. And in your own mind and heart, you are free. That's the most important part of your story for me. So give yourself some credit, Kayla, because you did something that many people in their lives never, ever do for themselves. And you got there. So you give me great encouragement. Okay?
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Take care of yourself. I appreciate you, Kayla.
Thank you, you too.
All right,
Love this show. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to be a cheerleader. It's okay. It is okay. I saw a meme online, a meme or a quote. Define meme. Like, is a meme a quotation that goes viral, or is it a meme if it doesn't go viral? How do you define meme? It was a quote. It's not attributed. It said, "Be kind to past versions of yourself that didn't know the things you now know." I kind of like it. I mean, I'm not hugely kind to my former self when I was anti-gay and anti-reproductive choice. But I can be kind in terms of understanding why I was indoctrinated to be that way and how these really bad ideas were pounded into my skull from my earliest memories, and how in some ways I really wasn't given that much of a chance. And maybe I'm not an idiot. So, I think it's okay to be kinder to the earlier versions of ourselves and then give ourselves credit for getting there. I was late to the party, but I got there. And, I try to cheerlead myself occasionally. Oh, maybe you're not beyond hope. Maybe you're not beyond hope. I'm just saying. Much more on life, the universe, and everything. Plenty more of your calls as well. We continue next. Hang on. If you've got a special occasion or kind of a just for the hell of it moment that you would like me to record a video greeting or a Cameo greeting for somebody you love, you can look me up at Cameo.com. Just search my name, Seth Andrews. I've been sending out birthday greetings, anniversary greetings, graduation greetings, and just straight up encouragement greetings for many of our listeners. And it's just a whole lot of fun to do. Just search my name, Seth Andrews, at Cameo.com. Continuing, just kind of a random show where we talk about whatever comes to mind. I've got Jane. Hi, Jane. Thanks so much for calling the show.
Hello. I'm kind of in the same boat as you with my father. He is in hospice, and he stopped eating last Wednesday, so I'm expecting that phone call at any time. I'm the youngest of 6. I'm the only atheist. I've told a few of my siblings that I'm an atheist, and they have the typical response, it's the denial, and it's I don't know. But I find myself not knowing how to feel. I was estranged from my father for 15 years, and then when he got his cancer diagnosis and his second wife died, it's like I got 3 more years with him. So I almost already grieved for him, and I got a bonus 3 years, and now I'm not sad, I'm not upset about him dying, but I'm mad about the beliefs and, my siblings saying, "Oh, God's so good." And I'm like, you can actually honestly say that sitting next to this man who was the epitome of a Western cowboy / forest ranger, and he's laying there dying. And you can honestly say that your God is good. You can honestly say that about my sister who got a horrible case of encephalitis. She's the best Christian of all of us. If there is a God, and it's this God that you love so much, why did he punish the best of us? I don't understand, and it makes me so angry. So I don't know if am I at the angry part of grief? What am I supposed to feel?
I don't even know if the stages of grief are a real thing. Some people like to talk about it. I forget the order, but it's like denial, anger, confusion, depression, accept. I don't know. There's supposedly a series, but I think everybody grieves differently. But it's a great point that you make. Yeah. God is punishing the believers because it's a fallen world. He doesn't come after the heathen. He doesn't come after those who simply don't buy it or reject it or have blasphemed. But he allows his own adopted children who said yes to him to be riddled with the same pain and suffering and awfulness that afflicts everybody else. It makes no sense.
Exactly. And it's caused me to talk to my kids about, funerals, and and I've told them, take me to Oregon, make me an Oregon resident, and just put a pillow over my face. If I get this way, I don't want to.
That's not. But I get what you're saying. We're not going to suffocate you on your way out. Yeah, I wish you a much more peaceful exit. But let me. I know we're being lighthearted about a heavy subject, but let me ask you this, because in some ways I feel like I grieved my father a decade ago. Like a lot of the emotions that I might feel at the time of his physical death, I feel like I may have felt at a time when we had seen the death of the relationship itself. Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how I feel. 15 years ago, after my mother died and he remarried, the woman did not like children. Now, I'm one of 6. There's 21 grandchildren. So this woman just basically cast aside any of my father's children that had young children that she didn't know how to deal with. So I grieved the loss of my father 15 years ago.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who has navigated that. It's hard. If you feel an emotional disconnect from someone, you're watching their life from this dispassionate place. You're separated from them in your heart, and you're kind of watching things play out situationally at a time when everybody else is wrought with grief.
And then to watch them grieve and want him to stay around longer. And it's like, okay, he's not there.
So he's not lucid. He's not really connected. He's just drawing breath, right, existing.
Yeah. He had pancreatic cancer that he survived for 3 years. I mean, I thought the man was going to live forever, honestly. He got COVID while he had pancreatic cancer. And, it's like, are you kidding me? This man's never going to die. I mean, he's just going to be here forever. And then, just all of a sudden last week, it was like, nope, we're done. And that was it. And it took him 2 days to just kind of slip into a coma. And he's lucid every once in a while, like maybe 5 minutes a day. If you're lucky, you catch it. But other than that, he's just laying there in the bed, dying, while the rest of us sit around and grieve. It's like, I don't understand how you think that your God would allow this. Somebody who was so faithful to him, somebody who was so, taught his children the right ways and taught other people the right ways. I mean, he was always an elder in the church. How can you say there's a God who would allow this faithful servant to lay here undignified, messing himself? This man would be horrified if he understood what he looked like and what was happening to him.
Probably another conversation in there about intelligent design. Like what kind of intelligent designer would design the ending of human life in such a drawn out, often painful and undignified way? I think that's a salient point. I'm so sorry for the troubles you've gone through. I think you brought a lot to the fore here on the show today, and I really do appreciate you.
Thank you. If you figure out a way to deal with it, can you let me know?
Same with you.
I just feel horrible. I mean,
if you end up with the magic bullet on this one, you have your people call my people. We'll tell the masses. Okay.
Awesome. I will do that.
Thank you, Jane. Take care.
For always being there. Bye.
All right. See you later. Sometimes I'm asked if I'm afraid of death. No, I'm not afraid of death. Twain said, I hadn't existed billions of years before now, and I didn't suffer the slightest inconvenience by it. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm like, non-existence doesn't bother me. But I'll tell you, the process of dying, the body shutting down, suffering, disease, I mean, there's so much of that on this earth that, that really does strike me. It's something that, I would never want for anyone. It's really, honestly, it's one of the reasons that I'm such a strong proponent of right to die or death with dignity laws, because I think we should be able to decide when to end our own suffering. And of course, there's a group of people who flip out and say that we're playing God Or the next step is death panels, where they drag people in and say, oh, you're taking up air. Click, turn it off, unplug the machines. They think that's a slippery slope, and I think it's just common sense. If you know there's no way out, if you want to end your own suffering, you should have the right to be able to do that with dignity. This is yet another example of how religious thinking, superstitious thinking gets in the way, because now we're not talking about the reality of the situation. We're rooting our opinions in unreality. Beliefs inform actions. Bad beliefs inform bad actions. This is not complicated. I've got David in Fort Worth.
Yeah, Seth, this is Dave. Thanks for taking my call.
It is so good to talk to you. What's on your mind?
Well, I got a little different story. Just a short preamble. You and I were born on the same day. I mean, the exact same day, 4/12/68. I was born in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Wait, two Oklahoma boys
my wife and I went,
born on April 12th, 1968? Yeah. This must be some sort of aligning of the stars. The cosmos must have had some sort of we're creatures of destiny.
Yeah, I know. Vonnegut had a day for that where you think you have a connection, but it's just random. But anyway, so, I've been kind of a fan of yours for a while, and I think it was 2019, maybe you came to Dallas and gave a presentation. And my wife and I went to go see you, and it was really good. And after it was over, she said she really enjoyed it. And I just threw that out there, because I feel like we got that connection. I said, well, Seth and I were born on the same day. And she said, oh, well, he's in really good shape. So there was that awkward pause. And she looked at me and said, oh, you look good too, honey. And I just want to say thanks for making me look bad, Seth. You could eat a donut or something every now and then.
I told a story about a speech I had given somewhere, and I was at the airport right before they were doing, I think it was like the Ironman triathlon. And the guy in front of me is in amazing shape, and he's checking in to get his rental car. And the lady looked at him and said, oh, you here for the Ironman? And he's like, oh, yeah, we're going to do this, and I'm going to run a marathon and bike 100 miles or whatever it is they're going to do. And then after she was done with him, I walked up, and she just looked me over and said, are you here on business? Like, she just knew there's no way I'm participating in the Ironman. I just kick in the gut, That's a funny story. Well, thank your wife for the compliment. Tell her it's all done with mirrors. It's all soft focus, okay?
I will. I love your show, man, and waiting for the next book. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much. I actually started writing. This would be a 5th book if you count ghost stories. When you start a book, you go through this gamut where the first few hundred words, it doesn't feel like anything. It's like you started a blog that will disappear. And then you get to 1,000 words and you think, well, it might become a book. I don't know. And then, you get to 3,000 or 4,000 words and you still feel overwhelmed and it doesn't feel like it'll ever be real, and that's kind of where I am right now. I think I've written probably 5,000-6,000 words, wondering, is there enough here? Is it going to work? Is it boring? I'm not going to even say anything else about it, but this is how the the creative process for me works, because I think I have something to say on this particular subject. And so I'm starting it, and I'm thinking, so I'll be curious to see this time next year. Did it come to fruition, or did I just look at it objectively after a while and just delete? Empty trash. Empty trash. Sorry, the false start. That didn't go anywhere. Bad idea. Next. Any other creators feel that way? You ever start a project and I think you have to get almost at least a third of the way into it, maybe halfway into it before it starts to feel like you might be able to get to the end? I'm just saying. I've got Laura. Hi, Laura. Are you with me?
Yes.
What's on your mind today?
I wanted to share my point of view being raised secular and then figuring out what the word atheist meant later and go, oh, yeah, that's what I am.
Okay.
So that, I can give a different point of view. I kind of have a sense of humor, and I like life, and kind of enjoy people, even though I have a love-hate relationship with people with all the mess going on in the world. But I was raised where my parents finally divorced by the time I was 10 and lived with my grandma for a summer, who's very Catholic, and then I lived with my uncle and his girlfriend for a while, but they were kind of New Agey. And I also, went to 2 different middle schools, 3 different high schools. I had to, as a loner, learn to make friends fast, and I used my sense of humor. And being blissfully ignorant of what religion does to people or did to people, I was willing to learn other people's points of view. So if somebody said, hey, can you attend this church, blah, 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 or go to this revivalist thing with the music for Christian, I go, sure. And I would experience it and go, okay, I took note of that. That's what that's like. And then I was with my uncle one time after I got out of the military. I was with him for the summer, and he was with a group called the Yahwehs, which was a cult. And I got to know the families and the little children, and they were dressed with their hair covered and long skirts. You couldn't show your ankles and things like that. And I experienced that for a couple of weeks, and I go, oh, took note of that. And then a couple of weeks ago, that same uncle who ended up in Scientology for like the past 15 years is an auditor, and he toured me around the Scientology building.
Wow.
And introduced me to all the Scientology people. And I'm just like, hi, nice to meet you. Hi, blah, blah, blah. Oh, good. And now I want to preface also before I go on is that I watched the thing about Scientology on HBO, and I learned about religions through you, Seth, listening to you for years, because I love psychology and I love learning about other cultures and what people go through. So I figured all this stuff out, and I go, wow, lucky me that I didn't end up having to be in a situation where I was told to believe certain things to treat other people certain ways, like, anti-LGBTQ or don't like this person for their beliefs because my beliefs are better. I never had that, always on my mind. So that if someone were to proselytize and witness me or something when I was growing up, I would just go, oh, that person must be mentally ill. I mean, it never occurred to me that it was just some real belief that, that was indoctrinated. And being blissfully unaware of that also was a good thing, because I ended up making friends with people from different walks of life and different religions. So whether they be Mormon, whether they be Seventh-day Adventist, whether they be Jewish, whether they be from Asia, or I remember having tea with my daughter's friend's mother who were from Pakistan, and how she explained that when 9/11 happened, some man at the Walmart was staring at her with hatred. And I said, oh, this happened to you? I go, I'm so sorry. So I ended up making friends with so many making friends with the pastor, making friends with all these different people that to this day are my friends, who I trust and they trust me because we're like family. So maybe I attracted the kind of people who had questions and just felt comfortable being around me without judging me. And if there were anybody judging me, I was just blissfully unaware they were doing it. So it's just a point of view I wanted to add to the table, that there's a lot of people like me out there, an army of me out there that think like that really don't understand, or are learning now through the internet and through shows like yours or podcasts like yours, that this is actually happening. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, that's good stuff. And I'm so glad you called. I appreciate you very much, Laura.
Okay.
All right. Take care. There's a lesson there, I think, about getting to know the people that we disagree with. If we see each other as human beings first, how often, humanizing each other in that way, do we realize that maybe we have more in common than we first realized or expected? My next-door neighbor is a worship pastor for one of the biggest churches in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he's one of the best people I know. I mean, we've had dinner together and laughed and had a ball and really enjoyed each other, and borrowing tools for projects around the house, or swapping stories, or I'm out walking Linus. He's on the front lawn, and we'll just sit there and talk for 20 minutes. He's one of my favorite people. We stand diametrically opposed on the God question, so much so that while he's on stage preaching about Jesus Christ, I am hosting a podcast and speaking in front of audiences all around the world, dismantling his belief in Christ. But more than that, we stand together in terms of loving people. We have a common goodness about us. We are part of the human condition, and I would sure love to see a lot more of that in this world. Not throwing bricks at each other from a distance. Back to the Israel-Palestine conflict. If it was less about destroying the other, and you could have a big kegger, and you invite everybody, and they begin to get to know each other, not the caricature or the misrepresentation of who they are or what they think or what they want, but you actually share the same physical space and you get to know each other as human beings. How often would we realize that maybe they aren't the great Satan that we thought they were? And atheists can be very guilty of this. We can be very guilty of being tribal. There are some people in this world who are awful people. I don't want to share a room with them. I don't want to share space with them. I stand by that. I will oppose them even from afar because they must be opposed. But there were so many examples of wasted opportunities from people who aren't the devil, who aren't the extreme incarnations of whatever these examples are. And maybe we have a shared humanity that would produce connection, human connection, then conversation, the exchanging of ideas. Maybe minds can be changed. Maybe that's how we change the world. I'm just saying. People rarely fit in a box. There might be a few people that fit in a box. there might be a few people who are, paper thin, like puddle, shallow human beings who might be able to be described on a byline somewhere, in a bullet point. That's possible, I suppose, but most people, no. I think most people are a lot more complex than that, and we should realize that as we interact with our fellow human beings on this planet. Joshua, thanks for calling, my friend. What's on your mind?
Are you there?
Yeah.
Well, first off, I would like to respond to your question about what a meme is. I don't know if you knew this. I'm sure you already did. But it was coined by Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
And so I looked up the Merriam-Webster definition of it, and it says an idea, behavior, style, or usage that spreads from person to person within a culture. That was basically the Dawkins version, and the one that you're asking about is the second definition, which is an amusing or interesting item, such as a caption, picture, or video, or genre of items that is spread widely online, especially through social media. But anyway, Seth, in response to the beginning, before I get into why I called, so my mom died when I was 10, and I went to foster care a little bit after that. A few years after that, I was raised by my staunchly religious aunt and uncle. My uncle specifically, who made me think that masturbation was evil. One Halloween, he actually took me to, him and his church took me to a gay bar to preach against gay people on Halloween night. They wouldn't let me watch any vampire things or anything because they think fictional crimes like witchcraft actually exist. And he actually died of cancer a few years ago. And I'm still very bitter about it and still suffer some sort of PTSD. So I know it's not necessarily the same as you with your dad or anything, but if I may borrow what you have told me and thousands of other people to make them feel better, you're not alone and you're not crazy.
Well, thank you for that.
In terms of how you feel and your reluctance of how you feel in terms of your father. So anyway, if I may, the reason why I called is I actually wanted to suggest a topic possibly for a future show. I don't think you've ever covered this topic, but like the very nuanced yet whitewashed version of Martin Luther, because, he's very known for his 95 Theses of 1517 and the Protestant Reformation, and there's even a movie that came out with him, which brings a lot of light to him. I believe it was starring Joseph Fiennes. I may be wrong about that, but I was very hit in the heart by watching that. And then also, I recently learned that Martin Luther King Jr.'s father renamed him from Michael to Martin Luther as a response to going to Germany and hearing about the Protestant Reformation. But the other side of history, which a lot of people don't actually talk about, is, I don't know if you call it a pamphlet or a diatribe or whatever, but later in his life, he wrote this thing called The Jews and Their Lies, which is staunchly, obviously anti-Semitic. if I may read a couple of quotes. It says, quote, "I have warned the Christians to be on their guard against the Jews." He says, "Our Lord also calls them vipers." In John 8:39, "If ye were Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham." Verse 44, "Ye are of your father the devil." And so he uses the Bible to talk about anti-Semitism, which was centuries before Hitler and the concentration camps. And so I thought that might be a very interesting topic. And if you'd like, Seth, I can send you quotes that I've extracted and also send you the link, because it's a free link for you to read that if you're at all interested in learning about that, or if you already knew about it. I'm not sure.
No, I would welcome all the information you've got. It might make for a compelling show. Send it to Seth@thethinkingatheist.com. I'll take a look as soon as I can, okay?
One more thing, if I may go.
Yeah.
If I may just do like a tiny itsy-bitsy ball washing, Seth. Anytime I've called you, I've been like extremely anxious and sweating and every single time. And I honestly, I've worked on stage, and talking to you, it's like, oh, so this is what stage fright feels like. But yeah, you are awesome. And I just wanted to say that in the same vein, how when people talk about heaven and how it's not that great because of how Hitchens compares it to celestial North Korea, it's in the same vein of your idea and God glasses when it talks about the bias when people read the Bible. And it's such a very good argument that you made, and it's very compelling, and you definitely deserve all the credit for that.
Oh, you're very kind. Well, thanks so much for being a part of the show. Send me the stuff. Let me take a look at it, and we may talk. I mean, I'm thinking of how I would format that particular conversation. I would really want to lean to somebody else's strengths as a historian and expert in Martin Luther. This is not my wheelhouse, but that's a lot of what I do on the show. I just bring on smart people. I ask a couple of dumb questions, and then I sit back and let them go. So maybe we can pull something off.
Yeah, I've even read a couple of those smart people's books because of your shows as well. I think recently was the Cult of Trump I've read because of your show.
Yeah, Stephen Hassan. Cool.
Well,
you're greatly appreciated. Yeah. Thanks for being a part of today's broadcast.
Yes, you are up and above. Greatly appreciated as well. Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you. I don't mean to be too base, but when he said that his uncle was warning about masturbation, you know what my first thought was? That guy's totally masturbating. Right? The preachers who preach about specifics, especially sexual sins, I'm convinced that's what they are wrestling with or doing in their own. Like, that guy's definitely shaking hands with the bishop. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. His uncle is definitely Lone Rangering, if you know what I mean. Definitely celebrating Palm Sunday. Taking the self-guided tour. I'm just saying, if I had to guess, his uncle been shucking the corn. That's all I'm saying. I'm just going to throw it out there, and you can take that wherever you want to. I'm just saying. Okay, I've got 843 in Charleston. Who's this?
Hey, Seth, it's HR again.
Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
Well, I've been hoping you would have a listener show so I could call, and I also had a suggestion for a show. I was wondering, I haven't seen it, but have you ever done an atheist or secular music edition?
You know, having done 500 some shows, I'm trying to remember. We may have done one a long time ago. I think we featured Monster on Sunday and Shelley Siegel and perhaps a few others. But, you know, we can always go back and revisit it if you think there's enough atheist music out there.
I don't know if there is. I'd love to grow my playlist, but I'm not sure who to put on there. So I'd love it if you did a show.
Another challenge, too, in the era of YouTube copyright strikes is that if I play a lot of these songs, then I get a notice that, oh, you're playing a song without copyright permission from the artist. So then I've got to reach out and, will I hear something back? You know, there's all these weird sort of requirements, but, you know, it might be something worth looking into. So let me do some homework. Okay.
Absolutely. But in regards to your topic with your father, I want to tell you the thing I wasn't prepared for. I was in foster care for a number of reasons, abuse and stuff I've brought up before. I don't know if you remember. But a lot of times when I lost people, before I was an atheist or as an atheist, I had already grieved and mourned the loss of that relationship in so many other ways that it didn't quite hit as hard. I was numb for a couple of days. I felt like some weird monster because I didn't cry right away and things like that. But when my foster father died, his name was Ray, and he was true to his name. He was really a light. He gave the best hugs. No matter what he actually thought of what you were doing with your life, he always just had a big hug for you and said, I love you and everything. He served in Vietnam. He was a cell phone engineer, and he was on site at 9/11 on Ground Zero, and he actually restored the cell phone service in New York City. And he was just an amazing guy. But he and my foster mom were Nazarene pastors. And they're in Ohio, and I'm in South Carolina, so I was only able to watch the service remotely. And the thing that got to me so bad was how much, instead of praising Ray's life and all of his amazing accomplishments and who he was to, all of the foster kids and family, all of it was how God or Jesus was working through him. All of Ray's light was attributed to their deity, and the whole thing was just a worship service. And almost none of it actually dealt with Ray's life. And I wasn't quite ready for that. Like, I've dealt with the religiosity of funerals and things, but this was different. Maybe it's because they're Nazarene pastors. Just how much everything he ever did was given to God, and none of it was given to him. And that really bothered me.
I can imagine. It cheats us, doesn't it? I mean, it's not like it's egotistical to say, I'd like a little credit for all the things that, all the sacrifices I made, the risks I took, the decisions, both good and bad, to acknowledge that these are rooted in the real world. I really do think, how do you memorialize somebody properly if you give credit to everything in their life to a third party?
How is it any different from any other Sunday church service, really,
Yeah.
And my foster mom was making these amazing mental leaps. I don't remember which scripture it was based on, but as to how time in heaven works differently. So she, even if she's not with my foster dad for like 20 more years, he'll only have been in heaven for like a minute. And just like a whole 5 minutes of this really strange rationale. I was so glad I was not in the room with everybody, because I wouldn't have been able to sit through it. I was really glad it was like I only had to watch it online. I don't know how I would have gotten through it, because it was so overly religious, and almost none of it was about Ray. But I found a lot of solace in a Facebook group online. It's called Grieve Beyond Belief. So if anyone's struggling, I highly recommend. It's a peer-to-peer group on Facebook. Maybe you can find a little solace there. No one's going to say thoughts and prayers or anything like that.
That's wonderful. Grief Beyond Belief is a fantastic way to connect with other people. It's a wonderful support group. Just search them on Facebook. HR, thanks for calling me. I appreciate you being a part of the show.
Absolutely. I'm going to hang up real fast, but I just want to say, don't worry about solving peace in the Middle East. Jared Kushner's going to solve it during Infrastructure Week.
I'll sleep like a baby.
Bye, Seth. Have a good day.
See you later. I was going to wrap up the show, but I see I've got Daniel, who's been on hold for an hour. So let's talk to Daniel. Are you with me, sir?
Hi, thank you. This is my first time calling into the show. Basically, it's around how do you come out as an atheist, basically letting your friends and family know that you are an atheist, because if you're born into Christianity and you're coming out as an atheist to your friends and families, it's a little hard, and I'm sure that has to do with growing up as a Christian, being told several times that don't go into the world, don't backslide, and don't do the things that the world is doing. Only fools are atheists, and being bombarded with that kind of messaging for a long time.
The only thing I would say is that when you enter conversations, especially with immediate family, do not enter those conversations with any expectation that you are going to change their minds. It does happen, but it's so monumentally rare that I just want you to prepare yourself. If you go in and they start to ask you, well, what do you think about this? And why don't you believe that? If you respond, I think respond to make sure that you're clarifying your own position, not that you have any expectation that you are going to bring them with you. It's possible, but it's pretty rare. I also think that it's important whenever you feel comfortable doing so, to refute bad ideas, bad information, false claims, to ask questions and encourage curiosity, but don't get sucked into that circular feedback loop of arguing, apologetics, counter-apologetics. These conversations almost always just suck people in. You're like, well, no, that's factually not true. And then they say, well, the Bible says, and you're like, but the Bible's false. And then they say, well, you're just in rebellion. Oh, yeah, I'm a better person I ever was when I was a believer. And before you know it, voices are raised and people get crazy on each other. This stuff is so tempting to fall into. My encouragement to you would be, you decide your comfort level. If you speak to their questions or challenges to you, do it because you're clarifying, here's my position. Here's where I'm at. Not because you expect to change their minds. You're not there to argue with them. You're there to paint the portrait of you, your mind, your heart, your value system, to draw a boundary line. Say that, we may disagree on this, but it's okay. I'm on my journey. If God shows up tomorrow, you have my word that I will acknowledge that because I am a seeker of truth. In the meantime, I hope that we can all live our lives and be good people and all that stuff, That's probably the only advice I would be able to give you. Live your life on your terms and don't get sucked into the black hole that so many of us got sucked into when we started talking to fundy family members. Okay?
Yeah, it's always tempting to get sucked into that, but yeah.
There's another resource too I think you might want to check out. It came out 7 years ago. It's a book by Greta Christina. It's a book you can find on Amazon or anywhere. It's called Coming Out Atheist, How to Do It, How to Help Each Other, and Why. And I have found that has been a really good encapsulation of what some of the strategies might be, how to find support as you come out. And it is, above all, an encouragement to be honest with other people whenever possible, that you do not believe in gods and monsters, Greta Christina, Coming Out Atheist, How to Do It, How to Help Each Other, and Why. Okay?
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much. Thanks for taking my call.
Daniel, you're greatly appreciated. Be safe. Thanks again.
Thank you.
A potpourri, a variety of calls on a number of different subjects, all relevant, all appreciated. My friends, thank you so much for being a part of this community, being a part of my life, and being a part of having the critical conversations, defeating superstition, and encouraging a personal relationship with reality. Don't give up. I really do believe you're making a huge difference. Be safe. Be good. I'll see you next time.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.